Hello, Cats fans. Mike Gandolfo here. I host the post-game show for your Kentucky basketball presented by Kentucky Fish and Wildlife with Mr. Jason Ince. So make sure that you're tuning in to ESPN Louisville 680 right after the Cats game finishes. We will take your first reaction and be able to tell you what we thought about the game. But if you've been listening to our show, you know that I talk a lot about how the college basketball season is divided up into three parts. You have your non-conference up front, and then you get into conference play after the new year, typically, not always. You get into the conference play, and when you get into conference play, everything ramps up a little bit. We saw Kentucky struggle a little bit with that ramping up early on. They're going to be able to try to avenge one of those losses when they play Texas A&M today in the SEC tournament. And now we're into postseason play. It's time to see if they're going to be able to ramp it up even more. We know that Kentucky has shown that here recently since that loss to LSU. They've looked fantastic. They look like they're poised and ready to take the step up into postseason play. This is a tournament that Kentucky owns. They've won 32 of the 65 SEC tournaments. They can literally win this one and have half the SEC titles. But it's been a while. They haven't won this since 2018. And we all know that 2020, there was no tournament, that it got canceled. This is actually the anniversary, really, of COVID. We thought there was going to be basketball, and then it all started getting canceled this week in 2020. But with that being said, this is one of the longer stretches Kentucky's had in their basketball history without an SEC conference championship. You have to go all the way back to when Billy Gillispie was the coach in the last couple of years of Tubby to find the last time that we had a longer stretch. This is the longest stretch of Cal's tenure. And of course, when Kentucky won in 2018, I think they had won 4 straight at that point. So they need to get back on the winning ways. It's been a struggle, though, for them to even get a win in the tournament. In that time frame, they've only got 2 SEC tournament wins, like games that they've actually won. So this is a massive, massive game for the Cats. They're coming in. They're going to be playing against a team that really they don't match up well with really well. I mean, this is a tough matchup for the Kentucky. I guarantee you they would have rather played Ole Miss. So as we before we get too far into the Kentucky Texas A&M matchup, let's just kind of recap what has happened in the SEC tournament yesterday. And what's going to set up to be a great day of basketball today. So in the first game, we saw Arkansas lose to South Carolina. South Carolina handling Arkansas, even though it was kind of close in the first half, they took care of business. The Gamecocks move on with SEC Coach of the Year, Lamont Paris at the helm. Mississippi State is the only lower seed to win. So they were a 9 that beat the 8. However, they were favored in this game, and we know that Mississippi State's a very dangerous team with Toulouse-Smith and Hubbard at the guard spot. Look for Mississippi State maybe to give Tennessee a little bit of a challenge today. I think that if I was going to call an upset, that's my upset. I think Mississippi State could beat Tennessee. They've done it before, so that makes me feel like, well, it's probably not likely to happen again. But we see these matchups that are happening today, lots of times where the lower seed is upset the higher seed, and we've seen them either split their season totals or whatever else. There's a lot of parity, I think, left in this group of 8 teams left. Texas A&M takes care of Ole Miss. I won a nice parlay bet on this. I kind of hedged my bets. I wanted Ole Miss to win because I think Kentucky would handle Ole Miss really, really easily. Texas A&M, of course, being as physical they are down low, their big guys really understand what their role is. They don't necessarily score a ton, but they do control the boards. They come off with 2 monsters off the bench, especially that really kind of control the rebounding edge. And then with the 2 dynamic guards that Kentucky couldn't stop the last time they played. When you think about this game, Texas A&M, when they played Kentucky, scored 97 points in a victory in overtime and only had 2 guys in double figures. And those 2 guards, Radford and Taylor, were incredible. Taylor had 31 points. I think Radford had, 31 points, and Radford had 28. So those 2 combined right there for 59 points of the 97. No one else in double figures for Texas A&M, which tells you that the rest of those points were pretty evenly spread out. Most guys having somewhere between, well, they all had between 4 and 9 points. And you got guys like Solomon Washington, like, again, who just really understands what his role is to go out there and control the boards, comes in off the bench with 9 rebounds. Garcia comes off the bench with 8 rebounds. Those are their 2 leading rebounders. And that's really how their season has gone all season long. I mean, it's been the 2 guards. They're the only 2 that are in double figures, are averaging double figures. And Kentucky wants to play at that fast pace. We know that this is the one thing that really concerned me about this Texas A&M loss when it happened back in January, is that Kentucky was able to play at their pace. They were able to basically limit the scoring to these 2 players, and they still lost. Now, the big thing, though, you got to remember Kentucky did not have a Adu Thiero. And I think the key to this game is going to be a couple things. I think the number one key is, can you shut down one of the guards? Can we have one, either Radford or Taylor, actually not score their average? That's going to be something that we need to watch out for. And especially, can we disrupt how Radford and Taylor play off of each other? I was looking at how many times, in the game with Kentucky, Texas A&M ended up having 11 assists. A lot of those assists were, well, Taylor and Radford had 9 of them. And it was, of those 9 assists, I believe they were all to each other. So where Radford is assisting on Taylor and Taylor's assisting on Radford, and we got to minimize how well those 2 guards play off each other. So Adu Thiero and I would assume DJ Wagner are going to be just critical in that spot. So when you think about that, what's the lineup Kentucky's going to go with here? What are we going to see? Are we going to start with Onyenso? And this is when we started to see Onyenso start to play more heavily on the minute side. He had 5 blocks, 32 minutes when they played last time, and 10 rebounds. That's exactly what we got to get out of Onyenso. He was 3 for 5 from the floor, 7 points. He was consistent and steady on the offensive end, but 10 boards, 5 blocks. That's what we need. So if Onyenso's there, does he stay out of foul trouble? Because that's I think that's the story so far. I mean, Texas A&M had 2 guys foul out last night. They had another guy with 4. I feel like they're calling this SEC tournament kind of tight. That could work in Kentucky's favor as long as the guys that Rob Dillingham are able to stay out of foul trouble, and Onyenso is able to stay out of foul trouble, because that they got to win the battle of the boards. They got to keep Texas A&M off the free throw line, and they've got to minimize how the 2 guards play off each other and try to at least shut down one of them. Because if you can shut down one of them and keep his assist total down and his point total down, I have a feeling that's going to be harder for the other one to create their shot. That's really what I'm going to be looking at and trying to watch to see what happens. And ultimately, I want Kentucky to get their revenge. And this is tough because A&M is playing for their tournament life. Not the SEC tournament life, but their NCAA tournament life. They are squarely on the bubble. They might be the bubble team. They might be the team that is going to be one of the last in or the last out when all things are settled. They started off great. They've kind of have slid here recently, but they've got a strong 10-6 SEC conference record in a very deep SEC. Like we said, we have 8 teams left in this thing, man, and I would not be surprised to see any one of these 8 teams playing on Sunday for an SEC championship. It's a really good group, and I'm really excited about the basketball that we could see today. All right, so then that last game that we have not talked about yet, Georgia was actually controlling Florida pretty early. Of course, Georgia with Coach White, who used to coach at Florida, but Georgia does go down, and the Gators march on. I think everyone knows how big fan I am of Ty Golden, and congrats to him, by the way, on his contract extension. I think he could be a future star coach in college basketball. All right, so that leads us to the SEC matchups for today. What are we going to see going on in the league? And I said it's going to start off hot and heavy. Tennessee facing Mississippi State. Connect versus Hubbard, we saw the great matchup, the great back and forth with Connect and Shepherd. And you got to put Antonio Reeves in there too. That happened as we ended the regular season. Are we going to see something very similar, which I think we could, with Hubbard and Connect today? It's going to be fireworks to start the day off in Nashville in that game. Tennessee is a 10.5-point favorite. I'll tell you what, I think that spread's way too big. I would take Mississippi State in the points. And I think they've got to be live when you think about a potential upset here. So when they played before, they played just once, and Mississippi State actually did win that game 77-72. It's going to be one of those things too, like that. It's probably going to be, if Tennessee scores in the 80s, they're the ones going to win. If Mississippi State can keep that game in the 70s or below, Mississippi State's got a real shot. And like I said, so that over-under number of 142.5, I would have to feel really confident that that's going to be an over. But Mississippi State doesn't want it to go way over. So be watching there. So my bet on that would be the over, and then I would take Mississippi State and the points. Then you're going to get a top 15 matchup with South Carolina and Auburn. This game is so important for both these teams who are on the bubble seeding lines. Auburn would love to be a 3 seed instead of a 4. South Carolina would love to be a 4 seed instead of a 5. And you've got just a great matchup here of coaches with Paris and Bruce Pearl. So this game right now, Auburn's a 7.5-point favorite, which seems really disrespectful to South Carolina. I know South Carolina has not been great late in the season. Both these teams, though, finished in 13-5. Another 142.5 on the over-under total. When they played in the regular season, we saw Auburn just absolutely boat race South Carolina by 40. And that's probably why we're seeing that spread as wide as it is. I don't know if we see a repeat of that, right? I think that would be really surprising to me to see a 40-point. Just if you remember that Auburn just fired, they scored 101 points. It's probably their best game of the season. Does Auburn come in a little confident? Is that game closer than 7.5 points? I don't know. But I think history would say that there's a good chance that's true. Then we get the Kentucky game that happens at 7 o'clock against Texas A&M. Can Kentucky avenge that loss that they had in College Station? Kentucky is a 5.5-point favorite. I think this over-under is low again, like 158 points. When the two teams matched up last time, they scored 190 points. So I think, again, Kentucky, knowing that pace is so important to the success of this Kentucky team. It's hard to imagine that this Kentucky team scores under 80 points. And, of course, we've seen the other team kind of score right along with them. So I'm going for the Cats today. I think the Cats pull it off. Do they win by 5.5? It's very much a question mark. But I do like the over bet in the Kentucky-Texas A&M game. And one of the bets that we always talk about, too, is you take the other team's guards. I think you got to pick your poison. Is it Taylor? Is it Radford? And you go over on what their point totals are. Maybe look at the one that's the most attractive at the time that you make your wager. But Taylor and Radford, one of those guys, I would bet over in their point total as well. The nightcap tonight is going to be a fascinating game when Florida plays Alabama. I think Florida is poised to make a run. So Alabama is a 4.5-point favorite. The over-under in this game is 171.5. Again, it's Alabama puts up points, right? So we know that that's the case. And this game may be one of those situations where if it's over, Alabama's going to win. If it's under, Florida's going to win because that's a really fair number. But it actually maybe even seems a little bit on the high side. So they've played recently here. Actually, in the last, let's see, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games. This will be the third time they've matched up in the last 7 games. Florida won the last one 105-87. Maybe I got to rethink my thinking then. Florida can score with them and go. And Florida then lost Alabama 98-93. So this is why we've got 2 games recently where the scoring totals have been super high. One of them over 190 points. Both of them over 190 points. And that over-under number for this game is it makes a lot more sense at that point. So I do think Florida wants to slow it down a little bit more than try to run with Alabama. I love Sears for Alabama. I think he's just an incredible player. He's going to be the guy that Florida's got to control. If Mark Sears goes off for a 25, 30-point game tonight, Alabama's probably looking really good. But don't be surprised to see the Gators upset the Tide in that one either. They've done it before. They've already beat them once. It could happen. So I do think, again, I don't know if you could say there's an upset really in the South Carolina-Auburn game when you have, even though it is a 7.5-point spread, but if South Carolina win, that would be an upset. I think Auburn's probably the most likely winner today out of the higher seeds. And I think all three of the other teams are on upset alert. You know, as much as a Kentucky fan, this is where I want to see the step forward. I don't know if Kentucky needs to win the SEC title for me to feel happy about it. I really would like to see them get to Sunday. So go Cats. Let's get to Sunday. You know, let's get Thiero out there and really shut down one of those guards. Let's control the boards. Let's keep A&M off the free throw line. Let's get A&M in foul trouble. Let's have an awesome night tonight for the Cats. You can catch us on ESPN 680 as soon as the game's over. There is no, there's a little break, so Kentucky should start right on time at 7. You would assume then the game's over at 9:15. And Jason Ince and I will be on the air, man. We'll be rocking and rolling and taking your calls, and make sure you interact with the show, because we really try to make that show all about you and get the fans' perspective out there. Let you vent. Let us hear how excited you are, or what we're worried about going into tournament play. A team right here, this Kentucky team can beat anyone. We know that. Unfortunately, right now we got to make sure that our ceiling's super high. We got to bring that floor of how bad it can be and bring that up, because this to me is the type of game that Kentucky can lose. And so the amount of confidence I think it would give me going into the NCAA tournament for Kentucky to go out tonight and take care of business. And I love that spread number of 5.5, because if they can win by 6, 7, 8 points, if they can win by double digits, I'm feeling really good about where the mental state of where this team is and their ability to potentially make a run. So that's what I'm hoping for tonight. That's what I want to see from the Cats. Another great game from Reed Shepherd, another steady performance from Antonio Reeves, and then figuring out who are the guys that are going to fit around those two that are going to take the Cats to victory. On UK. Let's go. Tune in tonight. We'll talk to you later. Bye.